Welcome to Rose Red Homestead. This is our second video of 3 that we are doing. We're showing how to prepare 3 different canned goods, home canned goods, and then on the last video we're going to put them all together into a meal. So we have already done one, which was our salsa recipe using tomatillos and chipotle chilies. Today we're going to do chicken bone broth. And so we will get started on that in just a moment. So I have all of the ingredients right here. Here is a chicken carcass. Now this is a Costco rotisserie chicken, and we purposely left quite a bit of meat on this one because we knew we were going to be doing the bone broth. We took the breast meat off, but we picked this one because look at how charred it is on the edges, and that's just perfect. We really like this. Will add a lot of flavor, this wing with the char pieces right there. And when I cut the skin, when I took the breasts off, I left the skin on, and it also has some nice charring on it as well. So when you do bone broth, generally you want to cook it for a really long time, like about 15 hours. And so there are a couple of ways that you can do that. You can put everything together in a nice pot and then do it in your oven, or you can do it in a slow cooker, or you can even do it in a pot on the stove. You can cook it slowly all night long, and then when you get up in the morning, make sure it's had about 15 hours, and then you're good. However, you can also do it in your Instant Pot, and of course, that's what I'm going to do because it is a whole lot easier. Now, this chicken has already been cooked, and so, well, this is the wrong knife for this job. I'll just see if I can pull it apart. And so I'm not roasting the bones on this one. We did a roasted turkey broth video as well, and on that one I did roast the bones because most of the meat was off the bones. This still has a lot of meat on it, but notice I'm breaking it apart because I want those bones to be exposed as much as possible. Now, because I took the breast meat, and this isn't a full chicken, look at all this good stuff I'm going to be putting in there too. So all this gelatinous stuff that has really good flavor. I'm going to make sure that gets in there. In fact, I'm going to do a little rinse and put it in. When you do bone broth, slow cooking for 15 hours, or you can pressure it for a couple of hours in your Instant Pot. But you might also want to add some uncooked chicken. I mean, if I had a package of wings out in the freezer, and so I just dumped the rest of our wings right here, and they were raw, but I don't want to put raw meat in with the rest of this, and so I really put these in the oven and roasted the living daylights out of them. So I'm going to add a little bit more flavor by adding these pieces. I'm going to save a couple for Jim. He likes them this way, so I'll save those for Jim. And then the rest of what you do is really up to you. So we have all this meat in here, which is one carcass plus a few more wings. And I'm going to add some aromatics, some flavor by putting, this is 2 carrots, and this is an onion and a half that I'm putting in here. 2 ribs of celery, plus some of the middle parts of the celery. The middle parts, the hearts, with the leaves are really flavorful. So I like those to go in there. Here are some more little baby celeries. More onion. And then, to help those bones break down the way we want them to, this is a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar that I'm going to put in. And here's a bay leaf. And then if you watched our video on the salsa, you know that I forgot to open up the garlic and take it out and mix it in with the salsa. So I'm not going to let that garlic go to waste. I'm just going to put it right in here with the bone broth. Then I'm going to add a little bit of fresh ground pepper and some salt. And you can flavor it any way you want to. And then I'll just fill up the water to the fill line on the Instant Pot, and we'll set this going. If I can see the fill line there. I will be putting it on, I'm going to push the soup button and set the time for 2 hours, 120 minutes. And then we'll let the pressure, okay, there's the fill line. We'll let the pressure release on its own. And we will then come back when this is ready to do the next step with. So I'm pushing soup, and it's already set for 120 minutes. Now, it's on its way. What is going to happen here is, whereas if I were doing it in the oven or on the stovetop or in my crock pot, I could add a lot more water to it and more chicken, more ingredients, and probably get 4 quarts, maybe 5 quarts out of one batch. Doing it in the Instant Pot, while it takes much less time, therefore much less energy, still this will only make a little bit more than 2 quarts. So I'm going to do 3 carcasses before we're done here. And when I get all of those done, then we're going to come back and we're going to take all of that broth, and then I'm going to do 1 batch of canning, which will be 6 or 7 quarts. So we'll bring you back probably in about 3 hours when this is all finished and cooled, so that we can pour it up, and I'll show you what happens next. So see you then. It's been about 3 hours, and I opened up this lid a little bit ago so things could cool. They're still, as you can see, pretty steamy. So I am dishing all the solids into this other bowl. But I did want to show you what happens when you do a bone broth and you put a little bit of vinegar in. Look how soft this bone is. I can just, with my fingers, break it apart. And that's exactly what you want to have happen, so that the flavoring from the marrow gets into the bone broth a little bit. So that makes it, and if I were to put this in my garbage disposal, it would just completely be eradicated, rather than if it was a fresh bone. So what we want to do now is to get all of these solids out. And these solids are now pretty tasteless. Even though there is some meat here, if you've ever done this before, you know that the meat just is not flavorful and delicious, because it has rendered all of its flavor to your bone broth. And that's what makes it so yummy. So I think we're just about at the end here. And then the last step is just to strain this broth. You know, I see pieces of broken bone in here too that have just opened right up. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to, this is a 1 gallon pitcher. I'm just going to put it in my sink and prop the strainer right there. See if this is cool enough that I can hold. I think it is. So I'm just going to run it right in here, catching the last bit of solids. You can see this bit at the bottom here has pepper in it, which will not go through the strainer. Some of it won't. Another bone that has opened up. So this is what it looks like. It looks like we have just over 2 quarts. Now this will be refrigerated overnight, and then when I finish and have done 3 batches just like this, that will be enough to run through the canner. I don't like to put just 2 quarts or 3 quarts in my canner. I like to run as full a canner as I possibly can. So we're going to shoot for 7 quarts, and we'll come back as soon as we have enough to run the canner. So see you then. Good morning. We're going to finish up our video on chicken bone broth, and it's very straightforward. Right here I have about 2 gallons of the beef broth after doing 3 batches in my Instant Pot. I completely filled these 2 1-gallon pitchers. Now notice that there is a solidified layer of fat here. Since I don't want that in my broth, I'm just going to break it loose. And actually I'm going to put it here on this lid so that it doesn't go down the sink. And notice the consistency of this broth. It's sort of gelatinous. Now, before I can this, I'm wanting to heat it up because I do not want to put cold things in a hot canner, and we have the canner outside heating up. So I'm just going to dump all of this in here. And there's a little bit stuck inside that I will use this scraper to get out. And then we just bring this, it doesn't have to cook anymore at all, it just needs to heat up. So I'm going to bring this pot to a boil, just barely boil, make sure that it's heated throughout, and then as soon as I have finished that, I'll bring us back and we will then put it into the jars. So I'll see you when this is all hot. This did not come to a boil. It almost did, but it is plenty hot, and that is all we need. The jars are room temperature. I've had several people ask me, what temperature are your jars when you put things into them? And it varies. This time it's room temperature jars because as soon as I put this broth in, it's going to warm the jars up enough so that we can put them directly into the canner. So this is a silicone 1-quart measurer. I'm just going to be using that to fill these jars. I'm going to leave 1 inch of headspace. The bottom of the funnel is my line. If I fill it up to the bottom of the funnel, then that is 1 inch of headspace. So there we go. And I'm going to continue filling these and getting the lids on. This silicone measurer is really wonderful because I can fill it up, and even though the liquid is almost boiling, the heat does not transfer to my hands, and I can handle it without a hot pad. So there we go, and I'll be back when these are all filled. So we have 7 full quarts plus this. So this one, of course, won't fit in my canner anyway. So I just have an all-in-one already used lid. I think it came from spaghetti sauce. And I'm going to set this one aside and put it in the refrigerator. But the other ones, I'm going to wipe with my paper towel, and it is saturated with vinegar. And the vinegar cuts the oil to increase the probability that we'll have a good seal. Want to be sure that these seal. This broth is just beautiful, and the taste it's the best bone broth I've ever made. So I was really pleased with the outcome on it. The Instant Pot did a great job. Okay, so I'm putting the lids on and the rings. And I'll meet you out at the canner as soon as I finish getting the rings and lids on. These jars, of course, are too hot to handle. Sometimes I just put them in barehanded, but not this time because these jars are too hot. And you always just use common sense about the jar temperature. You want hot or warm jars going into a warm canner. Sometimes if you start with cold jars, you need to start with a cold canner and heat everything up together. So all 7 are in. There was 3 inches of water to begin with, and notice it's come up to the shoulders of the jars. So now I'm just going to put the lid on. The heat is going. The water was simmering. So we're at 5,000 feet, and because PSI, pounds per square inch, is a constant, if you know your elevation, you will always know what PSI you need to set for. And so we have to set it for 13 at 5,000 feet. This is a dial canner. If I had a weight-based canner, I only have 3 choices, which is 5, 10, and 15. Therefore, I would have to go to 15. So we keep this dial between 13 and 15 as it's processing. And we will let this vent steam for 10 minutes once it starts venting and shooting steam out. And the reason for that is because we want to replace the air inside with steam. And then the processing time for broth, there are no solids in that jar, so the processing time is 25 minutes. So we will be back when these are ready to take out of the canner. The processing has finished and the canner is now ready to open. I always check by tipping the weight to see if there's any more pressure hiding inside, even though it's already down to 0. Looks good, so I'm going to open this up. Open it away from my face. And pull these out. Oh, these are beautiful. These are just the color of all of the leaves that have fallen on the ground out there. Beautiful fall day, beautiful results on this canning. All right, there we have it. 7 quarts of chicken bone broth. This broth will be such a welcome addition to our shelves. It will be used for soups and stews or just plain the way it is. A nice cup of warm broth on a winter day. That just sounds so refreshing. So this concludes our second video in our series. Even though each one of these videos is a standalone, it will be fun to bring them together in our next video when we are going to be doing spicy pork chunks. So we will see you next time.